Please pray with me. Lord, take me where you want me to go. Tell me what you want me to say. Let me meet who you want me to meet. And please keep me out of your way. Amen. Please be seated. Have you ever noticed that our culture tells us that first place is all that matters? Don't we want our kids to be all they can be, to be the best, to achieve the most, to get the highest grades, to get into the best schools, to live in the best neighborhoods, to win first place? What's wrong with that after all? We don't want them in second place or to live and play a life that is second fiddle to anyone, if you will. I'll never forget a story that I've told before from a few years back of a man convicted of involuntary manslaughter in Massachusetts for killing his son's hockey coach. Killing the man by smashing his face into the ice in the rink during a disagreement. The event was seen by the boys on the team and many of their parents. The dispute was during practice, not even an actual game. Not that that would have explained it. Parents want their kids to win. Winning is the ultimate goal. But I wonder how much sportsmanship is actually taught today. I imagine that coaches try. They try hard to get all kids involved, to help the boys and girls hone their skills, and to do their best as they learn how to play. But this isn't easy with some parents. I have many teachers in the room. They'll understand this, I know. Because they come to me for pastoral counseling because of what parents put the teachers through on a regular basis. They demand that their child get special treatment. They are bent on their child being the star of the team or the star of the class. My child must win first at all cost. In a household like this, first place is worth fighting for, isn't it? Now, I don't want to appear all holier than thou to you on this parenting thing, so I'll share a story that tells you what kind of dad Jim Irwin has been at times. When my daughter Sydney was 6 years old, 21 long years ago, I signed her up for church basketball. It seems like just yesterday. That first Saturday game, I drove her to First Pres, where the game was to be played, my coffee mug in hand. I walked in and walked over to the side, and I started chatting with a bunch of other dads that looked like they knew what they were doing with this kids in church ball game thing. Then the buzzer rang, and something suddenly came over me. I started cheering and jumping up and down like an idiot and hollering suggestions to my daughter and her teammates from the sidelines like I was the coach. I literally was running from one end of the game to the court to the other throughout the whole game. I was exhausted by the time it was over. I barely recognized myself. Sydney and I walked outside in silence, and when we got in the car to leave, she slammed her door with all the power a 6-year-old could muster, and she turned and put her finger in my face and gave me a dressing down. Seems that I had totally embarrassed her in front of her friends and the other parents. And if I did not learn to control myself, I would not be allowed to come to any more of her games. You see, Sydney just wanted to have fun and didn't need all those pointers about how to be the star of this team. Smart little girl, huh? And just so you'll know, she went on to play basketball all the way through the 11th grade, and I learned mostly not to embarrass her anymore at games with my enthusiasm. But all joking aside, it seems our culture has gotten way off course. But I often feel reaffirmed here when I'm working with the youth of this church. I'm amazed and impressed as many use their creativity to find ways of relieving the sufferings of others. We have now had mission trips for many years to many different countries to build schools and churches for those without them. I think in many ways young people today are more aware and more caring than other generations in the past. Say what you want about the young generation. Our children have a spirit that runs deep, but they're counterculture. Our church kids are. This culture wants to grab them by the throats and use them up in an endless cycle of acquiring and achieving to be number one. I was dismayed recently when one of our youth explained that they had to study during confirmation class because this youth had too much homework and needed to get ahead for the week. Not catch up, mind you, get ahead. And this prevented this young person from spending an hour and a half in fellowship with his youth group. And by the way, this young person is super dedicated to the youth group. He was just feeling so much pressure to achieve. I ask you, what messages are we sending young people, implied or direct, about what is really important in this world? Do they see how important our relationship with God is? How important our relationship with this community is? Or do they see how important it is to succeed at whatever cost? Homework is important, don't get me wrong. I asked my own son about his just yesterday. What is wrong is that we can't put a priority on carving out an hour and a half, hours, twice a month, so that they can spend learning more about their faith. The person with the most things, the person with the most first-place ribbons, is not necessarily the most successful person, folks. After all, the person who plays second fiddle is crucial to the success of any group. Arturo Toscanini, the great conductor of orchestras, once said, "It isn't so hard to find a pianist or violinist virtuoso. There are always people who are seeking that place of honor. But if you want a great orchestra, if you want great music, you have to find people who want to excel at playing the second violin. The other places you see make it an orchestra." And I guess the greatest second fiddle of all time is John the Baptist from our gospel reading today. You may or may not have known, but John had his own disciples, dedicated men and women who followed John. They followed him just like the disciples followed Jesus. And we hear about him mentioned in today's gospel. They were devoted to John. But they suddenly faced a crisis. When Jesus came along, John says, "Here's the guy. This is the guy I've been telling you about. Leave me now and follow him." People don't like change. It's so human nature, isn't it? And John's disciples were no different. But their leader was calling them to it. I want you to put yourself in their position for a moment. You've left your home to follow this peculiar man, John the Baptist. You've made statements of why you're doing it. All your friends and family at first teased you. When they saw you packing their bags, they realized you were serious, and they got frantic, and they begged you not to go. "Look at him," they said. "He can't even dress right. He doesn't wear a robe. He wears a shabby camel haircoat. He doesn't bathe, and he has a weird diet. He's frankly a hot mess by civilized standards." So you, as one of John's disciples, have given up every shred of respectability to devote yourself to this guy, to live in the wilderness with him. This guy who you just might be thinking is the long-awaited Messiah. And then one day John points at another young man and says, "You know, I've been telling you all these years how God was sending someone else whose shoes I'm not even worthy to untie. See that guy? That's him. Follow him right now." Well, they didn't bargain for this. They didn't know this Jesus from a hole in the ground. And how could he be better than John anyway? John was their winner. But Jesus stands there that day watching. And the men, well, they shuffle over to him, probably looking at their sandals as they kick in the sand a little bit. "What do you seek?" asks Jesus. They reply, "We were just wondering where you live." They left John and they followed Jesus. And that's the gift from John. We learn from John how to point to Jesus. Now, when a man goes hunting, or a woman for that matter, for grouse or for pheasants, the best thing he can take with him is a dog trained to point. Pointers can smell and hear the game, and they point towards it, and the hunter knows where that bird is and can hunt for it. We Christians are the pointer dogs for Jesus. Our job is to point the hunters to Jesus Christ. The hunter in this case are the seekers of truth. The hunters are those on a quest for justice and peace. The hunters are those whose lives seem fine, but who are trying to have a closer walk with their Creator. The hunters are sometimes broken-hearted people. The hunters are sometimes people without a clue, but they all have something in common. They all need God. And John pointed them to Jesus. And we're called to do the same. Second fiddle. The world needs great second fiddles, folks. I wonder what would have happened if someone had told that hockey dad that he would be giving his son something better if he had taught him the value of playing on a team, or doing his best, or learning to play his position the best that he could. No one can know for sure, but I bet that coach might still be alive today. I do know this, though. There is something more important than being the best hockey player on a little league team, or the best violinist, or the best IT manager, or the best lawyer in Manhattan. What is more important is that God is alive in each of us. We are the people who put God first in our lives. We are struggling with letting go control of ourselves and to give it over to God. That is so hard. If you think it's easy, you're not doing it right. Are you all familiar with the Serenity Prayer? The Serenity Prayer is what is read at AA meetings, among others. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Those reciting the prayer in recovery meetings are proud. They have relinquished their lives to a higher power, confessing from the bottom of their hearts that alone they stand helpless before their addiction. Now they stand proud and indeed joyful because someone had pointed them to salvation, literally bringing them back to life from death. Are you and I really any different whether we're in recovery or not? You and I stand in second place, folks. We'll never get higher because Jesus is in first place. And our job, just like John's, is to point people to him, to be witnesses. It's okay to play second fiddle when you're working next to Jesus. So I have a couple questions for you. Will you be like John the Baptist, this great gift that we have to discuss today? Will you play Second fiddle, will you do your job and point as many as you can to Jesus? Amen.